Welcome, Elsie. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
Hi. So, Elsie is a life coach who helps her clients see their limiting beliefs and then move past them to really see their greatness. And so, I would love it if you would tell us a little bit about yourself and, why you're passionate about the work that you do.
Thank you. My life coaching business is called Turning Life Gold because when I was 23, I got married and divorced in the same year. And one of my favorite quotes was, "When life gives you lemons, paint that shit gold." And I liked it because it was a little edgy um, and fast forward 6, 7 years, I was getting a master's degree in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica, and it was a really transformative program for myself. And I was watching myself heal so many of my past hurts and limiting beliefs, and watching my relationships and my life change because of how I was relating to myself. I was watching my classmates have similar experiences, and I thought, I really want to be able to share this work with the world. Um, and so I graduated with my master's, and I got a coaching certificate from Tony Robbins that also had like a extra certificate in marriage education and divorce prevention. And I thought, if I could just help one person, benefit and help their relationships, I feel like I would be doing something great in this world. And I just took it and started a business and went from there. And now I, coach people all over the world, and it's so fun and so fulfilling. And I feel like in my own little small way, I'm doing work to help bring more love to this world when we really need it.
And I love that. I think it's so important that people love what they do because very often
Mm.
they don't. And that, our greatest work can come out of that sometimes. So,
Yeah.
you help a lot of people to kind of, get past their limiting beliefs. But what about you
Mhm.
personally? How do you find time to kind of honor your own needs and to nourish yourself, mind, body, and spirit?
Sure. Well, I love this question. And I think one of the most important things that I do is in mind, body, and spirit is coming to love myself first and foremost, and to create time to take care of myself. I find with myself and at times with other women, um, it's hard to say, yeah, I'm going to take this time for me. Like, I'm worthy of investing in myself. I'm worthy of, maybe it's even taking just 20 minutes of my own time. And so for me, what I found is, I don't have children yet. So in the mornings are my time when I really have a lot of space to take care of me. Um, I usually start the day by journaling, by meditating, and then I always set a daily intention. And I found that these little intentions, even if it's as simple as like, I'm going to be really loving to my husband today, or I'm going to be really focused today, that these little things of what I'm telling myself make such a big difference in how I'm showing up in my life. So those are, I think, some of just the main three things that I do pretty consistently every single day. um, because I find that I have to start with me first and foremost, of really loving and taking care of myself, so that then I have more energy to love and take care of the people around me.
I love that. And I think the most brilliant thing is there's simple intentions, like just
Mm-hmm.
taking those small steps. When we think about kind of that deep self care, sometimes people feel like it needs to be this big, elaborate routine. And it
Right.
really doesn't, to have a
No.
profound change in your life.
Yep.
So let's talk about perfection, or rather,
Yeah.
the gift of imperfection. So I know I can personally say from experience that I set unreasonable expectations for myself about what I can achieve and what I can do. And then if I don't, it's like the whole world ends. And, it's very difficult to recover from that. And
Mm.
so I would like to know, why is it that we shouldn't let those imperfections, our failings, keep us from, finding our purpose, finding our path, doing what we're meant to do?
Mm. Oh, I love that. It's such a good question. And I really resonate with it. And I think that a lot of people who are listening can really resonate with that. To answer your question, let me tell you a little bit about my own story and my own struggles with perfection and imperfection. And then we can talk about a little of what are some ways to help support yourself through this, right? So for a long time, I was an aspiring perfectionist, right? I wanted my life to be perfect. And if it wasn't, I made like damn sure that y'all thought it was, right? I would try to have this perfectly clean house. And if people were coming over, I'd super quick try to clean it up so that you thought my house was clean, when in reality it's like mediocrely clean, you know? And I thought that if people knew that I was a life coach who wasn't perfect, no one would want to work with me. So I would try to, you know, just put out what was shiny and things like that, because who wants to work with a life coach who's like struggling with their own stuff, right? That was the limiting beliefs that I was telling myself. And I found that I was really put up Instagram and conversation with people every day through my coaching business of, you know, how their lives weren't as shiny as it looked on Facebook. I myself was getting very confused by all of that and would be comparing myself to the shininess of what was going on. And it was so unrealistic. And the more that I tried to compare myself to everyone else, it was like the more unhappy I was, because I just couldn't, it was like I just couldn't, you know, keep up to some extent. And I realized that I was getting stuck between these two choices of proving worth versus providing value. And so the idea of proving worth is like when I was trying to be perfect, right? I was getting stuck in proving my worth. Like I tried to make sure that I was always doing it right. That I was pleasing and meeting expectations and asking, am I worthy to do this? And I'd get stuck in competition of competing and needing to be the best and competing with other women, right? Instead of like lifting other women up and supporting them, like I'd find myself competing with them, if nothing else than in my own head. Instead of this idea of like providing value, where I stay in the question of who can I serve? How can I provide value? How can I like give and cheer on my sisters, right? How can I show that I'm super imperfect, right? And strive for excellence instead of striving for like, I need to be the best, right? Or how can I focus on doing it well instead of needing to do it right? And there's a big difference here, right? And I find for myself, anytime I get stuck in proving worth, and I'll share an example of how that's been super prevalent in my life the past week, because like every time I'm like, yes, I think I got this, the universe is like, no, you don't. But as soon as I started understanding that, I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like I need to start sharing what's real. And so I started participating in this movement called the #Tuesday movement, where on Tuesdays, I would share on social media things that were real, things that were imperfect. I'd take a picture of like my messy bedroom with all the laundry, or I would share about struggles that were in my marriage. I have a great marriage, a wonderful husband, and sometimes it's really hard. Like sometimes my marriage is difficult, and I think it's really valuable to share that, because I know that other people, their marriage is like up and down. And so as I started sharing vulnerably, it was really scary. And I had what Brene Brown calls a vulnerability hangover, right? Because I was like telling people all the things that I was trying to hide that I didn't want anybody to see or know about me. And I was like putting it out there. And sometimes I like wanted to throw up a little bit, because I was like, oh my God, what did I just share? Like, what are people going to think? And then the beauty is people related so well to it. And the comments were incredible, and other people started sharing their Tuesdays as well, and sharing about how they're getting divorced, or sharing about how they're bisexual, or how parenting is hard, or how they feel fat, or, you know, just all of these different things, how they feel lonely. And all of a sudden, my Facebook world had a little more humanness to it. And it was really beautiful. And the thing that was incredible was, as a result of my vulnerability, my business started to grow. So I like started challenging the assumption that people wouldn't respect me and people wouldn't want to work with me if they knew I was imperfect. And the thing was, is, I mean, maybe not everyone did. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who are judging me, and that's part of what I like have to keep showing up and doing it. But it was, I found people related to me more because I was like being superhuman again, right? I wasn't being super perfect. So that's kind of a little idea of it.
I love it. I love it so much. I think so often when we're talking about coaching, what comes to mind for people is burying those things, right? You have to stay positive. We don't talk about the dark spots in our life or the fact that we're imperfect. We just work to fix it. And by being able to share what's really going on in our lives, that, like you said, we bring more humanness to it. And that's what people relate to. It's that me too. Yes, I see you. I know I've been right through there too, or I'm walking down that path right now. And I'm so glad to have somebody there to do it with me, or who's been there and done that and can walk beside me. So, so that's huge. So, what are some of the ways that we can start to kind of shake that burden of trying to be perfect and, relieve some of that pressure?
Yeah, well, good question, right? So there's a lot. Well, can I share a story that happened recently to me? And then I can talk about maybe some of the things that I did to help myself get through it. Would that work?
That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So about a month ago, my husband and I led a trip of 11 women through the Sacred Valley of Peru. We were there for 8 days. And it was really wonderful and incredible. And it wasn't perfect. There was little bits of the trip, 95% of it was great, right? And there was like 5% of it that could have been better. And it was really interesting because I found myself focusing on the 5%. I found myself focusing on, man, I really screwed up here and da 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 da. And I had an interesting experience where one of our participants filled out the survey and they said, Elsie was great in group coaching and one-on-one, and she really shined and blah, blah, blah. And then there was moments throughout the trip where I'd see her get triggered or get frustrated. And, I didn't feel safe around her. And I immediately went into deep shame and cried and was like, oh my God, I'm such a screw up. How can I ever do this again? How could I ever lead? Like, she saw me and it wasn't even like really angry, right? It wasn't like yelling or I didn't lose my cool, but she saw me in that moment of imperfection. And it just got me and I couldn't get out of it. It was like this shame spiral that for a few days, like I was really stuck in, and it was super hard for me. And I couldn't see all of the goodness that happened. I couldn't see all the value. And I got really stuck in that proving worth cycle of, okay, well, let me, I don't know, talk myself up and blah, 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 blah. But inside, like inwardly, like I was really hurting. And I had this awareness of, so often we see people, we see presenters, we go to seminars and personal development workshops and conferences, and we see people on stage, like in front of the curtain, let's say, right? And they are shiny and they are bright and they're like in their genius zone. We never see them behind the curtain. And on this trip, I was with them for 8 days straight, right? They saw me behind the curtain. They saw my humanness.
Can you see me?
I can hear you. I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay, and I can't see you either.
Okay. Look how perfect. Look how perfectly imperfect this is.
That is so true. Okay, now I can see you. Can you see me now?
I can see you. I can see you.
I am so sorry.
No, it's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like really good at practicing imperfection, is what I like to tell people. So it's awesome that like we just cut out for a second. So what I realized was that she saw my humanness. I made it wrong. right? And I went into deep judgment and a bunch of this. And the way that I came out of it was using a ton of different tools, which I'd love to just share here, because there's a bunch of them that are really small. Like we said, like they're just little things that maybe some will work for some people and others will work for others. So, one of the first things that I did was when I started to realize, well, one, that I was really in that shame cycle of proving worth. I started to look at and ask the question, one, was there value provided on the trip, right? Was there value provided to these women? And as soon as I changed my question, right, I was able to see it so differently. So that at least helped me get out of it a little bit, was where I was like, well, did the trip provide value? Yes, absolutely. They had an incredible life-changing experience. Then I did what's one of my favorite exercises that I use all the time on myself, and I teach all my clients, which is called compassionate self-forgiveness. And it's really easy. It's a really beautiful tool. And it's simply just saying, I forgive myself for judging myself as. So it would be like, I forgive myself for judging myself as a bad coach. I forgive myself for judging myself as for getting upset. Or I forgive myself for buying into the misbelief that because, I got angry and part of my humanness showed that it means I'm unlovable. Because the main part that was there was like, oh my God, this means I'm not lovable anymore. Like it went to like my deepest core fear, is that I wouldn't be loved. And so I started by just like really saying those self-forgivenesses and then stating the truth after. So, the truth is I'm lovable no matter what, right? The truth is like, I did my best. If I could have done better, I would have. The truth is I'm an extraordinary coach and I don't have to be perfect in order to do that, to serve, to provide value to people. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I really loved what you opened with, which was, she saw it and I made it bad. Like that's a different way of being able to put this stuff, because we do, when people call us out on our weaknesses or our humanness, I mean, it's not a weakness to show that, to have emotions and to display emotions. It's important that we process those things and that we allow ourselves to feel those things. But when we're called on it, I think it can bring up so much for us, so much fear, shame, like what the hell is going on, why do I feel this way? And so it's important. I love the tools, being able to ask, did I bring value? Is it as bad in my head as I'm making it out to be, is really what it is, right? And so I
Totally.
love.
And there's a couple more that I've been doing and practicing as well that I'd love to share, because they're all just little, but they are big. So the other one that I started doing that has been really powerful for myself was, I noticed that in those moments of upset where I was taking her feedback and turning it into a judgment and making it wrong, that I was talking so negatively to myself, right? I was just like, God, I was beating myself up. And it really didn't help, like my own negative self-talk was just fueling the fire. And what I started to do was I took 30 seconds to speak to myself out loud, like I would if I was my own best friend. And the way that I do it is I put my hands on my stomach, because that's where, like, that part in us, I call it our basic self, but it's also like our inner child, things like that. Like a lot of times it resides in that stomach area. And I would just speak to her out loud for just 30 seconds. And I would praise her, and I would tell her how incredible she is, how smart she is, how proud I am of her for what she's done and what she's, created. And I can't tell you how much those 30 seconds really, really shifted things for me. And I've been doing it every day. And it's just been this little like piece of this positive affirmation, this positive self-talk that has really, really shifted things. And I've started, since I've been practicing it with myself and it's seen such like incredible results, I've started it with my clients too. And it's been really fun to see that. So, if there's anyone listening to this who can just really resonate to some of what I'm sharing, try the 30 seconds of just speaking out loud to yourself and just telling yourself like how wonderful you are and what you really appreciate. It's a little uncomfortable at first, but notice what you start, it's like feeling inside. Like I've just felt like this warm kind of glowy feeling in my stomach instead of this like tight harshness that I was feeling. It was a softening, right, that started to occur because of how I was speaking to myself. And that was really sweet. So, and then the last thing that I've been doing also is giving myself permission to both dare to suck and dare to shine. And I love this idea of daring to suck because I find for myself, if I'm so worried about being perfect, like I won't do things, right? Like you hosting the summit, you're daring to suck in this. But because you're daring to suck and daring for it to be imperfect, you're out here providing so much value to so many people who are going to be listening to this. And so we can dare to suck in little ways, right? We can, when we were in Peru, I told the women, I was like, okay, we're going ziplining. Some of you are going to be so scared today. How can you dare to suck and climb this mountain and go down these zip lines and have it be scary? Or for me, I'm probably an intermediate Spanish speaker and I make a lot of mistakes, right? And as an aspiring, recovering perfectionist, it's hard speaking another language when you make a million mistakes and you can't say everything you want to say. And so every day when I was in Peru, I had to dare to suck and just like make all the mistakes and get my point across good enough. And in that, I think it allows you to also dare to shine, right? And being vulnerable and me talking to you about some of these, like the story I just shared to you about Peru, I've not shared publicly yet up until now. And my hope is that in some way that I will be providing value to the one person out there who needs to hear it. And in that, I'm daring to shine in the same way. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, totally. I think, one of the kind of lines we walk is being good enough, being okay with good enough, and then constant growth, right? We're trying to say, oh, we always need to be better and we need to do all these things, but then sometimes then that doesn't leave us room to say it's okay that we're just good enough and we try our best. And like you said earlier in the call, strive for excellence instead of perfection.
Right.
And so totally thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks.
So my question to you, since you talked about it personally, but what are some of the ways that maybe some of the women that you've worked with, your clients, have started, I guess, to accept their imperfections? So one of the examples was the zip line thing, so being afraid and doing it anyway. Are there any other examples of how people could finally see that it was worth putting themselves out there, even if it wasn't perfect, and maybe something, somehow they grew from that?
Totally. That's a great question. I think the thing that comes to mind right now was I had a client who I recently had a conversation with, and she was saying, I'm starting out in this new relationship. I'm finding a lot of my fears and my old insecurities coming up, and I just feel like I'm coming into this relationship with so much baggage, and I feel like, can I really let him see me? And if he sees me, will he love me? And she was kind of listing off all of the pieces of baggage, right, that she was coming to this relationship with. And I said to her, look, part of being in a loving, supportive relationship is helping your partner unpack, their baggage, right? Because we all have our baggage. And she's like, well, I don't know. He's so great. He's so wonderful. Da, 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 da. And I was like, give him a few months, right? His baggage is going to come out too. And when it does, and his stuff comes up, like, you get to be there to help him unpack. And I think that's such a piece of being in a loving relationship, is just like really holding and supporting. And so she took that and she went to him and had a really vulnerable conversation of like, I'm scared. Here's how I'm showing up. I'm showing up by, in some ways, like trying to fight and push you away almost, because I'm so scared that like this is right. And that you're going to see my imperfections and it's not going to be good enough. So in that moment, she super dared to suck. Right. And it was so sweet. And they had this really beautiful conversation. And he was able to just see her and love her so much for where she was in that moment. I was so proud of her.
I just wanted to say that, I mean, so for someone going into a new relationship, I can certainly understand that. But I think even for us who are married, that still comes up for us, that we wonder, if our partner sees everything, every mistake, every flaw, will they still love us? And so,
For sure.
yeah, I know that that's a question, I have to resist hiding who I am all the time. Because I feel like showing up honestly and being okay and being vulnerable and saying, I am flawed. I make mistakes all the time. I get mad and I say the wrong things and do
all that. Yeah. Right. And I think it shows up so much in our marriages, at least for me. Like even last night, I had to say to my husband, like, I'm really sorry that I did this. Like I just screwed up. And he's like, it's okay. You were having a rough day, like I still love you. And that's the beauty of it, is being vulnerable enough to even say like, man, this is my baggage. Like, can we each love ourselves through it?
Love it. Okay. So I know that around this topic, there can be a lot of shame and what we might perceive as failing. And so what other things should women maybe watch out for as symptoms of trying to be too perfect all the time?
I don't know. Trying to be too perfect all the time. I really think part of it is the awareness of it. And I hear a lot of women say, if I'm not hard enough on myself, like if I really don't push myself, I'm not really hard on myself, I'm not going to, succeed, or I'm going to screw up, or I'm going to go back to that person that I didn't like before. And every time I hear that, it just like makes my heart hurt so much. Because you're never going to get there by beating yourself up and talking down to yourself. And you're just not, right? It starts with self-love. It starts with self-care. It starts with just like being, courageously vulnerable, as Brene Brown says. I think if this topic strikes a chord with you, one of the books that I love to recommend is Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, where she talks a lot about this and how to just show up. But I think that's one of the biggest things I see is women trying to really shame themselves into things or use willpower to get them to create something. And ultimately, willpower, that energy only lasts so long. It's a pain-based fuel instead of a love-based fuel. And so looking at how can I love myself through this and love myself enough so that I'm creating in a way that feels really positive, really fun, and that energy is pulling me instead of the energy of shame and pain and anger with myself and things like that. It's a really hard way to live. I've done it for a long time, and for me, it ultimately just ended up in self-sabotage, which was never very rewarding.
Yeah, I think that's something that I can relate to. It is easier, I think, and this is just my opinion, to be negative to be very, very negative about things. Or sometimes we can go the opposite, which is being overly positive and not acknowledging the other part of it. So going to the extreme in either way doesn't help.
Totally.
You have to there's got to be, and I hate the word balance, but there has to be some balance, I think, between processing at both ends, the negative and the positive. Not everything's roses, but not everything's terrible either.
Right.
So,
Right. And that's where we learn from our mistakes.
yeah.
Right. Like I've learned so much from this example that I shared about Peru. I've learned so much, and it's I think it's only kind of a quote unquote failure if we don't learn from it. And then taking it and being like, all right, okay, so this didn't quite work as well as I wanted. How do I do this and make it even better? And that's the thing too, is not giving up. Like, keep moving through these pieces of the learning so that we can get better. We can continue to keep showing up as an even better version of ourselves. And sometimes that requires really painful lessons. And that's part of it.
So, what is one or two key takeaways that you want women to walk away from this conversation with?
Mm. One is, we're all imperfect, right? And the more that you can let that be okay and start showing some of your imperfections, watch how you start having deeper conversations with people, how you are able to start bonding with them on a more heart to heart level. So for example, if a friend's coming over, maybe it's not worth getting stressed out to get your house super clean. Instead, just welcome them in, have a really heart to heart, beautiful conversation where you each provide value with one another. And she leaves and she's so filled that she didn't even notice you had a sink full of dirty dishes. And if she did, she didn't care. Right. So I think that's one. And two is, even in the shininess of the internet and being on stage and all of this, just to remember that we're all so human. And in this, to be really kind to yourself in those moments where maybe you didn't act the way that you wanted and things didn't go quite that way, but it's okay. And in that, to be really kind to other people too, because we never know what's really going on behind the screen, behind the curtain.
I love both of those. And I just wanted to add, because I had a conversation with someone who said something very similar about when we put expectations on ourselves, like keeping our house super duper clean when people come over, that they don't necessarily expect out of us what we expect out of ourselves. And that,
Totally.
yeah, and that can be really hard because we think, well, this is what other people want. And that's really just us projecting whatever it is on other people. And that's so stressful. Don't do it.
So stressful. It's not worth it.
Not at
Yeah.
all. So,
Mm-mm.
where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website at turninglifegold.com. I'm also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, under Elsie Storm. And if you really related to this, if this brought up something that you want to explore more of, there's a place on my website where you can sign up for a discovery call. And I'd love to offer you a gift of introductory coaching session just to provide some value and hopefully have you walk away with some really powerful key takeaways for yourself in ways that you can take some of this and really implement it on a personal level for yourself and the people in your life that you love as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you for,
Mm-hmm.
sharing vulnerably about your trip and what that meant to you. I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling of, worrying that we've done something wrong. And I love how now you're using it as a way to be able to help all of us to not go through that same thing, or at least be able to process it. So thank you so much for sharing and being here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's been amazing.
Thanks, Chris. And thank you for everything that you're doing as well. I'm so excited for all of these interviews and conversations to come out and to listen to them. And it's such a positive thing that's coming out in this world. And what you're doing is such a big gift. So thank you. I think it's perfect timing. And I just so support you. And I think it's just incredible. So I'm so happy to be participating in this and just sharing the love in all these different ways with all of your listeners.
Thank you so much.